All right, Christian Toto is an award-winning journalist, film critic, and podcaster. He's the founder of HollywoodInToto.com, a site I just love because it's not only a look at pop culture from the right, it is an informed look at pop culture from the right, which doesn't happen enough. He's the host of the weekly Hollywood in Toto, HIT podcast, which offers a right-of-center perspective, entertainment news. Christian, it's good to see you. It's been a while.
It's been a while. It's good to be here. And I was all kind of full of optimism towards 2019. And then I heard Tim Cook speak, and it's all out.
Well,
this is going to be the good year in comparison.
These guys are really on the warpath, and they do mean to shut us down. And it's dangerous. It really is. Their certainty, their self-certainty is truly dangerous. I've never quite seen it this bad before. But you wrote this piece, which I really found fascinating, that basically said that 2018 was a really bad year for the right in the culture. Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, it's on a couple of fronts. You look at late night TV, we know what it is, we know what it does, we know what it says. It gets worse, it gets more toxic, it gets more vicious. There's that. I look at some of the films that came out this year, including Gosnell, which you had a significant hand in, and it made about $3.6 million. Now, it's a small film with a small marketing budget. And actually, by all those measures, it did very well. But you would think a movie like that, with a lot of conservative-leaning actors, with a story that's certainly faith-friendly, you think it would be big, huge, that people would rally around it. And the same goes for Chappaquiddick with the Ted Kennedy movie. It was terrific. It was a really good film. It's probably best of the year. And it made about under $20 million. If conservatives don't rally to see films like this, which have, if not their entire message, a part of their message, then we're in trouble. We have to kind of support these pop culture moments.
So one of the things about Gosnell is it was like the Gosnell trial itself. It was basically boycotted by the left, which is most of the cultural venues. I mean, it wasn't reviewed at all. When it was reviewed, it was clearly at one point, I think it was the Washington Post. I may be wrong about that, but it was reviewed by somebody who obviously hadn't seen it. They went out of their way to say that it was gory, which it purposely was not. I know, I wrote it. It was not gory. And they went out of their way to ignore it the way they went out of the way to ignore the trial because they didn't want people thinking, oh, maybe abortion is not such a good idea. And yet you're saying the problem is on the right. You feel the problem is more on the right than it is on the left?
Oh, no, it's all over. That's just one example of why 2018 didn't work out the way it should have been. When you've got a movie like Gosnell, which is terrific, and I'm not kissing up, it's a very good movie. And we don't rally around that. We don't make that a cause celeb. We don't say, hey, Hollywood, if you don't make more of these movies, we'll work around the system and we'll make them successful on our own. And just a quick note about the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes for Gosnell. I talk to a lot of PR people. They want me to review their movies. I get pitches from them. That's perfectly fine. They desperately want those reviews to air the first week that the movie comes out, because that's the moment. That's sort of that critical juncture where if a lot of people are talking about it, it could get more attention. So not only are the amount of reviews of Gosnell on Rotten Tomatoes small now, the week it opened, it was almost like it was between 3 and 6. And a normal movie would be hundreds, perhaps. Yeah. So that's, a few reviews have trickled in between then and now, but when it really mattered, they were absent. Yeah. And that does count.
I mean, the time I wrote a novel, Empire of Lies, the first novel I wrote that was openly conservative, the number of reviews I got went from something like 200 to 300 to 1. And in that one, I was called, in mainstream venues, and in that one, I was called something like a right-wing lunatic. So, I mean, they actually do ignore things. And you talk about the blacklist. Now, there certainly has been a gray list. I know that it has cost me a bundle of work to be as outspoken as I am. No question about it. James Woods obviously lost his agent over this, and John Voight, who's been outspoken, has spoken to. I know personally that he has spoken to other people in Hollywood saying keep it down, because they will punish you. But you think the blacklist is getting worse?
Yeah, well, 2 stories recently just shocked me, and they were both in the Hollywood Reporter, which is a major entertainment site.
Yep.
One of the biggest. And the most recent one really kind of chilled me. It's about a new movie coming soon that is critical of Planned Parenthood. Now, last time I checked, you can be critical or in favor of Planned Parenthood. That's okay. But the story said, and it kind of mentioned it in a very offhand way, like, oh, by the way, they had to shoot it in secret because it was being critical of Planned Parenthood. Could you imagine that? You have to shoot something in secret because your opinion doesn't collect, it doesn't unify with Hollywood. So to do it, you got to be on the sneak. And something similar happened with the Roe v. Wade movie. Now, I don't know if these movies are good or bad. I don't care.
Yeah.
But if you've got an opinion and you can't share it, that's a problem.
My friend Obian Uju Ekiochi, who I always call Uju because I can't pronounce her name, but she is an African. She lives in London now, but she is a fighter against abortion in Africa, and basically puts forward the idea that Europeans and white leftists are imposing abortion on a culture that simply doesn't want it. Today, she was censored on both Facebook and Twitter, which is insane that the white poobahs of Facebook and Twitter are telling this black African woman that she can't speak for her culture if she is going to speak against abortion. Obviously, abortion is something they have to protect with silence, because once you start talking about it, it's impossible to defend. What about social media? I mean, is that part of this too?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing people, like you just said, examples where they're not doing anything wrong per se. They're not saying you need to burn someone's house down. They're not being vicious or vile, giving personal information out. Things that you think, okay, it is a public platform. That's crossing an obvious line. But I know a comedian here in Denver, Steve McGrew. He got kicked off recently. Do we know why? Often we don't. Twitter is very opaque with their rules. And we're seeing it time and time again. People get, I had a story recently on my site about how, hey, Twitter, what about these celebrities? I mean, Bette Midler just fantasized about the Trump family getting hanged for their crimes or their alleged crimes. You got Tom Arnold, who is an absolute nightmare on social media, who, doesn't have a bustling career, but whatever he has, there's no punishment there.
Right.
I mean, we see it time and time again. And things that have been said by celebrities about the president. I mean, how many times is the Secret Service going to knock on someone's door?
Right.
Mr. Arnold, Mr. Johnny Depp, Mr. Madonna, Miss Madonna. What's going on here?
Yeah.
And yet we see all that rage and hate directed in ways that seems absolutely against the policies that Twitter has. And there's never a punishment.
No, it's all on one side.
Punished.
And they've gotten very arrogant about it. They've gotten, that guy, Jesse Cook, who I think his name was, who was the radio host who got knocked
Jesse
off.
Kelly, I think it was.
Jesse Kelly, sorry. Absolutely right. But, they were so arrogant until they were called out by the government, basically, and then they backed down. But I think the government's going to have to get into this because they are really censoring people. So what do we do? You started out by saying you were looking forward to 2019. You thought it might be better. Why?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we still have some elements of social media. I can post something on YouTube. I can do something on Facebook, and people, there's a good chance they'll see it.
Yeah.
And it could go viral if the message really kind of concentrates and really matters to people. There are some great podcasts in there, the work that you do. There's a new show called Red Pilled America.
Oh, yeah.
It's terrific. It's kind of like NPR for the right. And how much do we need something like that?
Yep.
Good production values, well thought out. It's interesting. Sort of a libertarian comedian named Andrew Heaton has a new podcast called Something's Off. So we do still have the majority of these platforms. We haven't been kicked out yet. There are ominous signs, and that arrogance really kind of scares me. But we need to kind of leverage all these platforms to spread the word. We see so much bias in the media, and I go on my Twitter feed, and all I see is conservatives shaming reporters and shaming them and pointing to double standards, where the Associated Press had a backtrack on an obituary for President Bush because it was so pathetic and so one-sided and so cruel. It took them 2 days to do it, but they did it. And that's because you and I and everyone else there shamed them and showed them how ridiculous it was. So we have to stay active. We have to be activists.
What about at the movies? Do you think there's any chance? I mean, are they so insulated now? When I say movies, I mean movies and TV. Are they so insulated now that they're not going to serve 64 million people who voted for Donald Trump? They're just going to let that money lie on the ground?
There's a lot of money on the table across the board. Do you think they'd have one late night comic who is at least center right?
Unbelievable.
One. Just give me one. That's all we want.
Yep.
That person, that guy or gal would be a superstar.
It's
I
amazing.
would watch them every night, even if they were moderately funny. It's hard. I just watched this generic horror movie. It's coming out in a few weeks called Monster Party. And in it, there's a Trump little kind of dig at Trump out of the blue, apropos of nothing. But that's where we are because Hollywood is obsessed. You read the Twitter feeds of celebrities. They can't take a step without thinking about how much they hate Trump and how much they have to tell you that they hate Trump. So from a content creation point of view, we've got to work out of that system, which is what Gosnell did.
Yeah.
It didn't go straight through the traditional media outlets. It went around it. So it's still possible. It's just much, much harder.
Yeah. I think Trump, as a real estate mogul, has done a good job of taking up space in their heads for free. Christian Toto, great to see you. Hollywood in Toto. Really check out this site, hollywoodintoto.com. Will that take them to your podcast as well?
I've got a link right at the top of the page for the podcast.
Okay.
So it's pretty clear, so they can do both.
Okay, great. Well, have a great holiday, and I'll see you next year.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.